All right. Okay, so this first one is actually not splitting and joining text, but it is a text function, and good ones to know. So what I have in front of me is a list of, and I'm just going to look at this column, which is the one with all the food, and it's a mess. It's a total mess. Some of the items are capitalized, some of them are lowercase. I've got an extra space between side and salad. I've got a what's called a leading space, which is a space before hamburger. I just put another one so you can see it. And then there's probably a trailing space somewhere. They're really hard to see because they come after the text. Okay. So the two functions, and these are text functions. So the two functions that I want to show you are the proper function and the trim function. And they're actually under proper, there are actually three functions. There's lower, upper, and proper. Lower just turns everything lowercase, upper turns everything uppercase, but the one that people use the most is proper. And so, and it's a very simple function. So it's equals proper and just the cell reference. And then I can scroll down, but here's a little tip that I may have covered. If you go to your very corner and double click, it'll do the same thing as scrolling down, okay? And so now I've fixed all the capitalization. Let me just be clear on what proper does. It capitalizes the first letter of every word. So that's going to be especially helpful if you're working with data, especially that people input. Usually, if you're porting it off a system, you're not going to get these kinds of errors. But when people start inputting on some forms, it's amazing how many people, I can't tell you how many people misspell their own names, but that's another matter. But, I've got all uppercase and lowercase are all a mess, so it cleans it up. Okay. The second function, which is the trim function, gets rid of all the extra space problems. So it gets rid of leading spaces, which is a space in front of the text. An example of leading space is like here by the hamburger. It gets rid of trailing spaces, which again are really very difficult to even see, right? But they would be over like where fish sandwiches. If you can see my cursor, you see there's like a space or two after, okay? Which really hard to see. And it gets rid of any extra spaces in the middle. So if there are two spaces, it just changes it to one, okay? And again, it's a very simple function. So I may as well, since we already did the proper, I may as well use that column. This way I kill two birds with one stone. And now you can't really see it with this one. But again, when I double click down, you notice it got rid of the extra space by the hamburger and the extra space by the side salad. Okay. So the last thing, you may be tempted at this point, say, to delete your original one, but the problem is it's reference to that. So the last step you have to do, and there's a reason I'm not going to do it this way now, is I like to copy it and paste it as a value over the original and then just get rid of this. But I don't want to do that yet because I want to show you one more thing. Okay. So what I'm going to do instead is copy it and paste it over the last item. Okay. And so all I do is I come here and I'm going to copy it down. I'm going to go to copy and I'm going to paste it and I'm going to do paste special. And I'm going to paste it as a value. So that means it's no longer the function, it's just whatever the amounts were. Now I could eliminate the first item. It's not going to have any effect. And I think this was all capitalized in the beginning. But... All right, everybody clear on that? Now, for the more advanced people here, who are, And I'm just going to delete these columns because it's easier. For the more advanced people here, what you can do is do them both at the same time. Okay. And this involves nesting them. And order does not matter. Okay. So I'm actually going to do it both ways just to show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, I'll do it the way we did it initially. Equals proper. And then I'm going to open up the parentheses and I'm going to type in trim. And open another parentheses. And then I'm going to select the item. Now, where people get a little messed up with these nested ones is they can't figure out how many closed parentheses you need, especially if it's complicated. So I'll tell you a little trick. You count the functions. So there were 2 functions. So I need 2 parentheses. Got it? And now, once again, I can scroll down. And so I got them both in one shot. Got it? Now, because it's fairly easy to do this, I'm just going to show you that order doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you put trim on the outside and proper on the inside or vice versa. So the last time around, I started with proper. This time I'll just do trim. And then I'll do proper. And again, two close parentheses. And I'm going to double click down. So now I can show you what I would normally do in this case. So what I would normally do is after I had finished doing that, I would copy this, but paste it over the original. Do paste special. And I only have to actually pick the first one because it'll pull the whole list down. So now this has all been fixed. So now all I have to do is delete what I'll call this helper column that I used to figure it out. And now everything's cleaned up. Okay, so how many of you, just a yes, no, were familiar with that? Did you know that? Give me just a yes or a no. But it's really handy. So I'll see. I haven't seen any responses yet, but I'm waiting. Okay. Now, what I always like to do, because I do a lot of training in both, Google Sheets and Excel, is to highlight if something works in both. This does exactly the same. So if you work with Google Sheets, you can do exactly the same thing. No differences in the functions. Okay. All right. So now we'll move on to our topic here. Okay. And let me go to the top. Now I did it already, but I'm going to redo them just to show you. Okay. So we're going to talk about how you split text up. And in some cases, you may need to split it for a lot of reasons, but one reason may be that you need to rearrange it in some other way. Like this has last name, first name, we want to do, first name and last name even together, right? So we want to separate it out, okay? Now, this function does exist in Sheets, but has a slightly different name because it was originally developed in Sheets and Excel stole it, okay? So, one thing I'm discovering now is in the beginning, Excel was like, that was the powerhouse, and Sheets was kind of like the weak sister, but what's happening is it's working kind of both ways now. Yeah, no problem. Don't worry about it. In which in some cases, I'm seeing functions that didn't exist initially in Excel now ending up in Excel because Sheets had them. So both teams are looking at what the other is doing. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go equals text split. And then I'm going to select the text. Now what I have to tell is, what is the separator? Now I'm going to do it wrong, actually, okay? But a common wrong to make a point, okay? So your separator has to be in quotes, all right? So the separator here looks like it's a comma. And then I'm just going to close the parentheses. And that's going to split it up. Okay. And then again, I should be able to just do it here. I may have to scroll them down. Yeah. Because it's 2 columns. And now that worked. Now there's actually a mistake. I don't know if anybody can spot it. Okay. And if you do, you get extra points, but there is a slight mistake here. Not that we didn't learn something already that you could use to fix it. But if you notice here, there's actually an extra space by Liz and by the first names, because the separator actually isn't a comma, it's a comma and a space. So between this word and that, there's a comma and a space, okay? So there's a couple of ways I could fix that. One way I could fix it is, after I'm finished, we just learned a function that would fix that, which is the trim function. So I could just use trim on this column and that would fix it. Or I could simply add the space. So you can have more than one, so I should say, character as you're separating. And here, when I do it, now it's correct. Okay. So just bear that in mind, especially when you're dealing with comma separators. They actually are comma and a space. Okay. And that's it. And you know, that's about that. That's all I have to say about that. And then there are different ones. So for example, I'll just pick one here. I'm just gonna, you know. Well, here we just have first name and last name. Okay. So here the separator, the delimiter is, oh, I know why that happened. I imported this. Okay. So this used to be the way you had to do it. And the reason you're seeing this is I must have imported it from Google Sheets. So when it gets the split function, it comes up with some funky approach. But we're gonna do it from scratch, so we're not gonna have that problem. Okay. By the way, text split is a very new function. So if you have, most people at this point have Office 365, so their stuff is updated, but if you have like an old version of Excel, you won't find it. Okay, so it's a relatively new, within the last year or two. But let's do it again. So this time we're just going to do equals text split. And this is just to give you another example, right? And I'm going to select the item, and here the delimiter is a space. And then that's going to separate it out. And then we've got it. Okay. Now we're going to talk about how to combine them. But a very common reason why we might have to do this is we have first name, last name. And I cannot sort those alphabetically, because if I go to do a normal sort, it's going to sort by first name. So I'm probably going to have to switch it to last name, first name. Probably would do it with a comma in order to be able to say alphabetize the list of names. And then if I'm really fancy schmancy, I can turn it back around to the way it was originally. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. So that's how you separate them. So the question is, how do you put them back together? Okay. You know, how do you join them? Now, there's actually a few options. There's actually 3. I'm probably not going to do all 3 with you. I'll do the most common one with you. Actually, I'll do the most common 2 with you, and then show you a little trick. Okay. So the function that you want to use for this is called concatenate. And it's really hard to spell, but the good thing is you don't have to worry about it, because when you start putting it in, it'll show it to you. Okay. And I've done it already, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it again. Okay. Once again, I always like to give you in the template with it complete. So if you want to look at it, you know how to do it, but I want to show it to you so you can see. Okay. So I have to decide what I want to do here. What did I do before? Let me see. Oh, I put it like with a comma separator. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go equals concatenate. And I'm just going to show it to you wrong first, once again, just to show you, like a common error people would do. So I'm just going to select the items, right? And so the problem here, whoop, did it fix it? Oh, that's amazing. Oh, you know why? I got it. Because this had the extra space. Okay. So I'm going to fix that first. Give you a chance to see trim again. Okay. And now I don't need this, right? I can get rid of that. And then we'll start again. Just want to insert another column here. Okay. So we'll try again, wrong first. So notice what's wrong here. I didn't really tell it what the separator is. Actually, you know what? I changed my mind. I want to do this differently. I'm going to do first name, last name. Okay. First name, last name. And the problem is that it's swished. It's squished. There's no space in between. So when you're using concatenate, you need to put in the separator. Okay. And it always has to be in quotes. So what I would do is I would come in here and add quote and a space and then another comma. Got it? So you actually do it as you're writing it. And again, once I have one, then I can scroll down. Okay, so let's just do again a little bit of a different, with the same one, a little bit of a different situation. Let's say that I wanted to do last name, comma, first name, right? So once again, I would do equals concatenate. That's what last name, comma. Now here, remember we learned this. You have to do a comma and a space, right? And then the first name. And that's going to give us what we want. Everybody clear on that? Now, you're not limited to 2 words. So, for example, if I had separated out, now where this gets messed up, in this first example, I'm actually going to fill them in, okay? And then I'll show you where it gets kind of messed up is where some people have a middle initial and some don't, okay? So for the sake of this first one, I'm going to give everybody a middle initial, okay? And let's say I just wanted to put this together the way it's written. Now I have this set for text join, which I'm going to show you later, but let's just do concatenate first. So what I just have to do is put it in, but I have to make sure I do all the separators. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go comma, space, comma, comma, space, last name. And then I can scroll down. Now, where this screws it up, but you can fix it with trim, is what would happen if some of them did not have a middle initial. So what you're going to see is, because it specifically lays out that you have a space, you're going to end up with extra spaces. But we have a solution to that. Remember, what did we learn? That would fix that, trim. So you really could use concatenate, and then just after you finish, if some of the people don't have middle initials, just for the whole set, do trim, and that'll clean it up. Okay? So there is another way to do it. Okay? And its syntax is a little different. Let's see if I even remember it. So it's I'll check it down below because I think I have one done. Let's see. I shouldn't have taken it out, but it's all right. I got it. I think I remember. So it's equals text join. Now here, you do the delimiter first, but you only have to write it once. Got it? You only have to write it once. You don't have to do it like each time. And then you just have to show it. I believe after this, and we'll talk about why I'm doing true. And then I just go and do the first one, comma, second one, comma, third one. So it's like you put the delimiter up front and then you just indicate all the items. And again, I'll explain the true in a minute. Okay, so this is really interesting. Look what happens when I scroll down with this. So it doesn't have the extra spaces. All right. So let me explain to you why and what the true means. So the true says ignore it if there's an empty space. That's actually what true means. So you put the delimiter, and you, in almost every case we're using text join, you're going to probably use true. But let me just show you what happens if you select false, right? You're not going to see any difference on that one because there were no blank spaces. But in the ones where there's a blank space, it's going to end up producing the same result as you had with concatenate, okay? So in most cases, if you're going to bother using text join at all, you're probably going to want to have it true, okay? And then you don't have to worry about having to go back and do trim afterwards. Okay, everybody good so far? So moving right along, I want to teach you two more functions that we're going to use, okay? So the tab says write function, but I'm actually going to show you both of them, okay? And then I'm going to circle back, okay? So that's my first name, right? So I have a cell reference to my first name, and then I say, just give me my first initial. So only pick one character. So what it does is it looks from to the left, starts at the left, and it's going to only count one character. And that's going to give me a J. And we're going to use that later when we are going to turn around and say only use the first initial. Got it? And that's the left function. Now, again, most commonly you're going to do 1, but just to show you, it could be 2. That's just how the syntax of it is. It says, look to the left of whatever the text is and just give me that number of characters, okay? So normally for left, you're going to pick 1. And we're going to come back and circle back with the joining. But I want to show you another function. That's the right function. By the way, there is a mid function that says you can kind of, you have to tell it where you want it to start and how many characters. But for the most part, it's less commonly used, okay? The one that is used is the right function. I use that all the time, okay? And so what happens with the right function is it's going to come from the other end. So the most common use of this, and by the way, this is obviously a fake number. Is a social security number. Now, for security reasons, I don't want to show a social security number on a report. I may have it in my spreadsheet, but if I'm going to print it, I don't want to show all those digits, okay? So the custom is to show the last 4 digits. So I use the right function, and I say 4. And what that's going to give me is the last 4 digits of the social security number. And here again, I'll just scroll down. Okay, so that's one use, and there are a lot of reasons in HR, et cetera, why we would use that. The other use is with, and I had one here, done. You know, it's just the same thing. The other use is with bank statements, or bank account numbers. So I worked with one of my districts on a manual, and in the initial manual we had all the account numbers, and then when we were looking back we said, you know, maybe not a great idea for security, so we'll just list the last 4 digits. And once again, it's just the right function, the last 4 digits. Okay, so those are handy and of use. Now what you would do, by the way, a common thing is maybe I'll have a spreadsheet that has the social security numbers in full or the bank account numbers in full. And when I go to print it, I'll simply hide that column and just print this. But I still have all of the information, and that's all that's going to appear on the written report. Do you follow? And then I would just unhide it, you know, for my records. Or the same thing here. If I were generating a report, I would hide the social security numbers, but show, and then I would just label as last 4 digits. Okay. So any questions on that? How many of you were familiar with the left and right functions? Yes, no? Okay. So let's go back. And I'll use concatenate for this one. Okay. Okay. And we could do it one of 2 ways. I'll actually show it to you both ways. Okay. And give you a little more opportunity to get a little practice with concatenate. Okay. By the way, always a good idea when you're learning this kind of stuff is, if you're going to be adding functions in, do them without the function first and then add it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do first name, last name. First name, last name. Got it? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, and where it has the first, you know, the first name, I'm going to add the left function. And remember that the left function has two parameters. So one is the cell reference, and the other is the number of characters. I'm actually going to close that. And that's going to give me L Carpenter, but it's wrong, okay? Because I'm missing the initial, right? I'm not showing the initial. So the easy way to fix that is, since we have a space here, just do initial space, and that cleans it up. Got it? And so now I have the first name and the last name just by using the left function. Any questions on that? Now, what if I wanted to do it differently? What if I wanted to show the full first name, but then just the first initial of the last name? So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to get rid of this left function here. This is the easiest way to do this. And hopefully I'll get it right, so I won't have to redo one more. You know, sometimes it's just easier to redo it. But anyway, we'll see if I get it right. There we go. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the left function to the last name. And now there's going to be an error here. You're going to see it. Okay. Whoops. Oh, what did I do? I forgot. I think I forgot to do the extra parentheses. So I'll just add it because there was one there. Okay. So the problem is I don't have the what? The last, the other period, right? But that's easy enough, right? All I have to do, because it's right over here, is just add, once again, they have to be in quotes, the period. And now I've got it done. Okay, so it's not super complicated, but there may be reasons why, again, a lot of times for confidentiality reasons, even in something where I have students' grades or whatever, maybe I don't have full names. Do you follow? Okay, or reports. So it's handy to know. And these are, for all of these, we're using concatenate, it's always going to be the left function. For all the ones involving social security numbers and bank statements, that's going to be right function. Okay, everybody good? Okay, so now I show you the really cool stuff, which I didn't include in your thing. Okay, and I have to tell you, everything I've shown you so far works in Google, with the one exception being there's a slightly different name for text split. Text split in Google is just called split, but otherwise it works exactly the same. Okay, what I'm going to show you next does not exist in Google. Okay, and it's kind of like sometimes it works good and sometimes it doesn't, but it's actually a kind of AI. It's an artificial intelligence built into Google, into Excel. Okay, and so we're going to have some fun with it, and I'll show you how you do it. Okay, so let's start in the beginning here. So I have first name, middle initial. I actually should probably have a period by the middle initials, but I'm not going to worry about it for this first example. Okay, so what I need to do is give it an idea of what I'm looking for. Sometimes I have to give it one. Sometimes one's not enough. I have to give it two examples. Okay, I think here one will work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do Olga. And now I'm going to go to the cell right below it and I'm going to hit flash fill, because that's the feature we're talking about, flash fill. Now, there are two ways you can do flash fill. There's a keyboard shortcut, which is Control E, which is the same shortcut on a Mac or a PC. I can just do Control E. And notice it filled it all in. I didn't have to use any functions. It just assumed, since I used the first name and there was a space after it, figured that's what I wanted, right? So now I come over here and I do M, and then I go down to the cell below it. This time I'll show you the other way you could initiate it. So you go to data, and it's this item over here, flash fill, and that's going to fill it all in. Okay. And once again, I'm going to do the same thing. Go below and do flash fill. Now, flash fills are not dynamic, meaning that if there's a change here, it won't get reflected in the flash fill. So it's kind of like fixed. Now, not a major problem, because you could come right back in and redo the flash fill. You probably would have to take out, it may not let you do it if there are things there. So you'd probably have to take out what was there. But if you come back in, then it changed it to brighter. But it doesn't automatically update. So that's pros and cons. The good thing about this is you don't need to know any functions. Okay. And you don't have to worry about the spaces and the other spaces. Okay. So let's look at some other uses of flash fill. So here we have social security numbers, right? So we said what? Last 4 digits. And here I'll do, I'm going to do Control E. And it got them. Okay. So I didn't have to know the right function. I could just do this. Okay. All right. Another one. So here, this is purposely meant to foul it up. Okay. Because it doesn't know whether I mean the first one for the months or the second one for the dates, right? It's just a 1. So if I do flash fill here, it's going to assume probably the first one, right? But look what happens when I give it one more example. Okay, so the first one was a 1, the second one was a 7. Okay. And now the AI says, oh, that's what he meant. And it picks it up. So sometimes you may have to give it more than 1 for it to figure out what's going on. I have found sometimes I have to do like 2 items. Okay. All right. Let's see what other examples I have of flash fill. I think that may have been it. Okay. Yeah, well, let's just take a look at this one. So once again here, I just did first name, last name. And I do flash fill and it fills it in. Okay. So it's good as long as you understand it has some limitations, particularly if your data is going to change. Okay. That's where you're going to really run into a problem. Okay. By the way, what if I didn't really want the middle initials here? I just wanted first name and last name. And it gave me that. So flash fill is cool. It's a feature that is unique to Excel. Doesn't mean Google at some point won't include it, but it at this point at least it's a Excel function, and it is a kind of AI because it is really interpreting what you did and it's looking back at the original and trying to figure out what you did. Do you know what I mean? And it, and it's universal. So it, it doesn't matter if there's spaces or delimiters. It just looks at what you did and says, hey, I think I get I get the pattern. Okay, that's it. Any questions? Anything anybody needs me to do again? A lot of times when I doing these little standalones doesn't take an hour because it doesn't take an hour. Yeah, Stacy, do you have a question?
Yeah, and the one that you did before with the left function, when you did the J with the period, you added it to the,
Right.
was it
So
the com
now, was
I
it the
just
first names or the last names?
um
You don't remember.
yeah, it was I know you like you were in it and then you went back and you added the left to it. It might
Yeah.
have been the first one you did, I think.
Well, if it's because I'm going to do it differently. Okay. So
Right.
let's take a look at these where I'm doing the first names, right?
Yes.
And once
Mhm.
again, I'll take it out. I'll take the delimiter out. Okay.
Okay.
Well, this will be doing it wrong. I already have the left function in here.
Okay.
So it's missing the period, right? Because if you really look here, what I told it is forget about the left part. I said, give me the first item, then separate it by a space. So all I have to do is where the space is, add a period. So it's a period and a space. And then that's going
Okay.
to throw it right where it is. Now, could I have done it a different, more pain in the neck way? Yeah, I could have, which is silly. Okay. I could have done this. So had the period as one item and the space as another, that would have worked too. But you don't need to. Do you follow?
Mhm.
You could just add it in right here. Whoops, what did I do there? Oh, I have an extra quote. And there we go. Got it?
Can I can I see the one on the bottom one more time
Sure.
with the Liz C
Right.
period?
Now with the bottom, you have your first separator. Let's look at the items. You have your first separator. See the period at the end. Got it? So here you do have to do two. So what you have is the first item,
Okay.
the first name. Then you have a space, then you have the last name, but just the first initial. And then you need a period at the end. So you just do another comma and you have the period in quotes. Got
Okay.
it?
Thank you.
I think
Yes,
when you
thank
play
you.
with it, you'll get it. You have to kind of try it. Okay. But that's what
Okay,
you
thank you.
those. Yeah. Can you do the first and last name without the initial? In what, in a concatenate or in flash fill? Which one? Yeah, you can. Absolutely. So for example, I got to find one that has this here, right? So we know with, in flash fill, it'll just do it. Okay, so let's do flash fill. That's the easier one. Okay, so here, that was actually the last thing I did. Okay, all right. So here I have first name, middle initial, last name, right? So you really do each column flash fill separate, right? So I'm going to do Olga and do a flash fill control E, right? Then the next column I'm going to do Acevedo. Let me make sure I spelled it wrong, right, because if I don't, it'll mess it up. So if that's what you meant, there's no initial. Now, is it going to make any difference if there's a missing initial? No, won't make any difference at all. Because it's not looking at that. Got it? You have to do each column as a separate flash fill. Well, maybe not. No, probably not. Let's try that. No, you probably don't have to. I did because I wanted those separated out. If you're asking, could I get rid of the middle initials? I'm going to guess yes. Okay. So if you come over now, once again, with Flashfill, you never know whether it'll figure it out, but we can try. So let's just do Olga. I think that's what you meant, right? And yeah, I did it. Okay. All right. So was that what you meant? Give me a yes or a no. Yeah. So yeah, I could do it. Right. It just skipped them. And it wouldn't matter whether some of them had them or not. So let's just do one where it didn't have it. And again, I'll just do it again, so we'll see. I know for sure it's not going to be a problem. Okay. So yeah, you're good. You can get rid of the middle initials. Yeah. Okay. Oh, want to see another one? I think this one works. Crossing the fingers. I never know with Flashfill, but let's try it. Okay. So let's do, I think it should be Jane Doe. So of course I need more of them. Let me create a few more. I'll do like 3. So it did it. Right? Oh, we can have fun all day. Let's try this one. And this is the last one, then I'm gonna let you people know. Okay. So let's do high school. Yep. Okay. So it's pretty good. Now, of course, I could do any of these using concatenate, or text join, but it did a lot of it, automatically. So it can be a huge time saver, as long as you understand that's not dynamic, which means if there are changes, you're going to have to rerun it again. Okay. Any other questions? And I would assume you'll play with it and you'll discover other interesting uses. Yeah. But it can be kind of good because there are some situations where we want to combine info from multiple columns. Like, for example, maybe we want to have some report where it has the first name, and what school and what grade, and have that just as one column. And you can then do that, even if it's in a different order than the order that they appeared in the columns. Now, there are other ways of doing that, which I'm going to cover in the Excel basics. There's a function that would do that as well, but it's pretty nice. I actually don't use Flashfill that much because I'm kind of like an old timer and I prefer to to do the functions because I like the dynamic nature of it, but it's not bad. Certainly if you're in a hurry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll push out the recording to everybody who registered. Okay. And yeah, I can understand that. I would want to review it again too. Okay. All right. Everybody, have an awesome day. Hopefully we'll see in one of the series that we're going to offer in the future. I am definitely going to offer an Excel intermediate to advanced in the spring. I'm not sure I'm going to do that with Google, but I'll think about it. But I'll probably do something else with Google. Yep. Thank you. All right. Oh, different languages. We got Spanish on the way in and Italian on the way out, Chrissy. All right. Sounds good. Thank you.